You. So again, my name is Rob Weber. I'm co-founder of NativeX. We've created an advertising technology company specifically designed for games. We have a ton of experience with how to design, optimize, and improve monetization in games. And you know, it's interesting. I think a lot of the game companies don't realize just how much data is stored within these ad technologies. When we take that data and we're able to create essentially a principled approach to design that can be applied, some of the principles that we've learned can apply well beyond the ad. So I'm going to show you today how to leverage all this data and this design thinking to improve the other elements of your game beyond ads. And if you follow these principles, you should be able to double or triple the performance of your game without changing any core game mechanics. These are very simple things you can do to improve your game's performance. Developers are really leaving money on the table by not following these principles. So for starters, you know, if you're building out a game studio, you're thinking about how you can grow the macro metrics. Let's say you want to increase the overall company worth, these big macro metrics. But it's through focusing on micro metrics that we're going to talk about today that actually are going to lead to big gains that are going to drive your macro metrics. So some of the different micro metrics we'll talk about are linked to user engagement, monetization, retention, in-app purchasing, and other metrics. And then a little later in the talk, we'll talk about 6 design principles that can increase your micro metrics and influence your macro metrics. So I just want to start with one example of how we used our data and these design principles to improve performance. We basically started, this game publisher is one of the most popular game companies in the world. They asked us to respect their confidentiality and not share their name. So I'm not going to share their name with you. These are actually fictitious. We had some fun creating some graphics of a fictitious game called Tiny Knights just to illustrate this. But basically, using our server-side ad technology, we started off with week 1, just creating we wanted to get a baseline metrics. So we basically ran a small icon in this sort of interstitial ad format. And we started collecting baseline data for a week. And as we entered it, we started to work on different optimizations using these design principles. And in week 3, we started to make some modifications. We moved to a more full screen interstitial. And basically, we saw a 92% increase. We then captured some more data for a week. We did some more optimization, and then in week 5 we released basically the final wave of optimization, and we ended up seeing an additional 92% increase for a total of 265% increase. So what happened? You know, some of the design principles, I'm going to go through them with you kind of one by one. We started looking at using the game character and to call attention to the ad. And that was one of the principles that we'll talk about, how that can impact it. We used lines and encapsulation to contain the ad, and we used some native design to basically encapsulate the ad. And all this led to big improvements. But these principles can can also drive success in other areas outside of just advertising. So I want to move away from the ad example and actually jump in and look at first-time user experience. But before we do that, let's talk about retention and user engagement. As everybody knows, the foundation of a successful game is really having strong retention and engagement. You can't hope to make any money off your game if your users are all leaving. And this is a pretty popular, I don't know, I think this has been out there for a little while, but 30% of users, once they download an app, they never open it up an additional time. And there's really 3 main points, as we try to look at just in the topic of retention and engagement. Let's look at first-time user experience. If you can't get them hooked on your app in the first 30 seconds or first 5 minutes of gameplay, you're not gonna have a chance to ever become one of the highest engaging games. So there's really 3 main principles that I look at when you're looking at first-time user experience. You want to have natural progression, so you want to introduce players to the game naturally and let them learn the basic rules and mechanics one step at a time. And secondly, you want to provide positive reinforcements. So you want them to have this positive emotion, that they create this sense of accomplishment in your first-time user experience. And then you want to create a customized identity. So if players can customize their profile, their persona, they can feel a sense of ownership and possession in the game. So I actually pulled this from App Data on June 14th. So this is about a week ago, or July 14th. In terms of daily active users over MAUs, so this would be a good proxy for the highest and most engaging games in the app world today. Does anybody know or want to take a guess at who's number one? Any guesses? Clash of Clans? Nope, wasn't Clash of Clans. Good guess, so I think they were like just outside of the top 10. Any other guesses? Candy Crush, yes. Boom! So Candy Crush is the highest engaging game by measure by DAU over MAU. I know everybody's played Candy Crush. I wanted to actually look at a different game on this list, and that's Dragon City. So we're going to look at the first time user experience of Dragon City, just to get a sense for how are the most engaging games in the world running their first time user experience. So this is kind of what it looks like. These are the first 4 steps, and I just want to call your attention to a few things. The first step here in the top left in Dragon City, you'll notice they're pretty vibrant colors. This is really going to capture your attention right away. Second step, they're using strong visual cues such as the arrow shapes. They're also using strong character association to draw your attention to the text. It's a great thing to do. Step 3, there's clear direction coming in. It may be a little harder to see in the back, but some of the choices are actually grayed out. So you can't actually, they're really pushing you down this choice of selecting this dragon on the left. This is excellent. It creates real natural progression and clear direction. You don't want to, if you give people too much choice before they learn how to play, they're gonna drop out. And then we talked about positive reinforcement. They give you this great big congratulations message as you're completing early tasks. So it's tapping into that emotion. So I want to get into 6 design principles that we've sort of gleaned out of our data and our optimization. But before I do that, I want to give you some other reference material. Because in 25 minutes, you're not going to become a master in leveraging emotional design and design principles. But these are 2 really good books that influenced our thinking. Seductive Design, and then there's Designing for Emotion. I don't know if any of you have read those books, but they're pretty excellent, so I'd check them out. So we're going to go through the principles, and then we'll look at monetization more specifically. So if the first design principle that can really increase your micrometrics and so that you can get these 200 to 300% gains, is basically start with native design. This means integrating the characters, environments, fonts, colors, and other elements right into your core UX. The next one is you really want to draw attention, and you can do this through lines and encapsulation to critical aspects or steps in your game. So in this case, we're using lines and encapsulation to draw attention to the call to action screen in an ad, or it could be whatever button configurations you have in your app. Next is movement and animation. So this is a really tricky one in games. It's called video games for a reason, because it's animated. But when you're dealing with core UX and interfaces and how you design them, if you use too much animation, what we found, you start to see a big decrease in performance. It's really good to have a little bit of animation, so just don't overdo it when you're dealing with the core UX in your game. Color and contrast. Of course, if you use really vivid colors, you can really draw attention in design. Character associations, this is huge in games. You can transfer the emotion you're developing with your characters into whatever it is you're trying to drive them to do in your game, your interfaces. And related to that, specific to games, we've actually found the eyes and the gaze direction of the characters in your games, depending on where you point them, has a huge impact in the actual performance of people taking action within your interfaces. So this is a really good example. If this character was looking the other way, you would see a big decrease in performance based on the optimizations we've done. So I want to jump into monetization and kind of segue more into, we're talking about, start with kind of in-app purchasing, and then we'll look at advertising-based monetization. Within most games, I think of payers as really a VIP classification. You want to provide them with extra value. And then when you're dealing with, when you're working with, you want to create great game experiences, of course, for the free players and give them opportunities to become payers. So this was actually something new that we started doing. As we look at games, we've seen a lot of users just never become payers. Everyone's heard the metrics. Depending on the game genre, it's usually 90% or greater. But I think one of the big aspects is that users don't even know where to find a virtual in-app storefront. They don't know how to actually even make a purchase. They don't know what that even looks like. So one of the new ad formats we created, we call it our deep linking ad format. We basically introduced this. We've been running this in kind of beta with some large publishers and games recently. And basically what happens is we present two different options to a user. This would be typically a non-paying user. And we basically give them an opportunity to see basically one click directly from the ad unit or the ad format into their in-app storefront, or they can earn currency by watching a video. So we've seen a really good, and actually in our beta with this, 10% of the users that we've shown this type of ad format to have clicked through to the storefront. That's a ton of new users looking at the storefront that typically aren't jumping in and actually considering making a purchase. So it's very impactful. I just want to show you where this might be placed in a game. If a user, we've been experimenting with this. When a user attempts to beat a level, if they fail 3 different times to achieve a high score or to beat that level, this is when we would display this deep linking ad format. And then it would give the user the opportunity to either go to an in-app store, make a purchase, or to watch a video. So it's been very effective. And so if you look at that, let's say we talked about how do you get people into the in-app store. Let's look at, I want to go back earlier. Number 9 on the list was Heyday on the most engaging games list. So this is an example of the in-app store within Heyday. And I just wanted to open it up. Does anyone, do you see anything specifically within Heyday that you think they could be doing better based on some of the principles we've been looking at? Anybody have any ideas? I'll show you what we were looking at. Here's 3 things I think they're doing well, and then I'll come back and show you some things I think they can improve. They're leveraging strong associations. Diamonds are really prevalent as the currency in their game, and they're using that right in their storefront pretty prominently. It's a very native design. It's got some animation. They've got visual items. There's really not a lot of text in this, which is really good. You don't want to use a lot of text. But there's a couple things I think they're doing very poorly. They don't have any kind of call to action. It's just a price. And all the time, I think they see dramatically different performance if they just move the price over and had a call to action. It could even be something as simple as an arrow or a triangle, some kind of a shape, but have a call to action button, don't have it be your price. I've actually seen this, like more than half of the in-app storefront designs I've looked at, people use the price as their call to action screen. That's not telling the user what you need them to do, right? Highlight the better deal. In this case, they have 6 different options. I actually think they do a good job on price of not overwhelming the user with too many price points. However, they should be guiding the user to the group of items that's going to be the best deal for them that they recommend they purchase. And then stronger color contrast. The call to action button is actually a little bit of it's a little off-white and it's on top of an orange color, so they kind of blend together. That's not enough contrast to drive people to actually make the purchase.
Also, they put in too many options.
Yeah, too many. What do you think would be a better quantity of pricing options? 3? Yeah, I think 6 is definitely pushing it. I've seen some where people have pricing options where there's like 100 pricing options, but definitely less is more when it comes to choices on price. So let's say you presented this. We drove users into the storefront. We had a very well-designed storefront, but now they just don't convert. And now what do you do? Well, one of the things that we've done with sort of emotional-based placements is actually we created an exit placement so that a user can watch these video ads as an opportunity to earn credits. So maybe it's a user who doesn't have a credit card or for whatever reason they can't make a payment. They came into this because they had a negative emotion. We don't want them to leave the storefront and not cure that negative emotion, or they're going to be at risk of leaving the whole game. So this is where we use placements in our technology to basically guide what advertising and promotions are going to run where. And I want to point out something else on the way we handle video at NativeX. We just are releasing this technology. Our video advertising for games has actually been built server side. Most of the companies that are doing video, if you see video ad solutions, it's all done through basically through native video players. So they have no ability to update and optimize the performance of their ad units because it's all hard-coded. That's not the case with the way we built video at NativeX. In 1 week of optimization, we changed from the left to the right, and we saw a 37% gain. Our partners are able to basically, anytime we have a higher performing ad format, through our server-based technology, we push out the new formats, so we keep iterating and you get the benefit of all those gains. You don't have to keep updating the SDK. So I think game mechanics, you've heard a lot of, I'm sure, different sessions the last 3 days about how to create strong game mechanics, how to build a successful game. Once you've mastered that, you can follow these UX principles and you can get some further gains out of your application. And these are really the simple things that every game developer can do to get significant performance. It's the low-hanging fruit. So you've seen how engagement, retention, and monetization can be impacted by metric-driven design and these design principles. If you want some information on how we could help you out with that, here's my contact information. I think we've got about 5 minutes here, maybe a little bit more, if we can take any questions.
We actually have more than that. So
okay, great.
If you guys have any questions, please let us know. I actually have one question in terms of formats. You've tackled a little bit about it, but what are the best practices when it comes to interstitials, full-page interstitials like the ones you've shown here, and video ads, for example, in terms of colors, characters? What kind of design elements are making the most impact when it comes to performance?
Yeah, I think well, I know one of the ways we look at it is how much, if you look at performance, think about if you're in a game, how much of a user's time does it take to consume the media? And for that reason, I really think video advertising should be generating more revenue for you per impression or completed impression than an interstitial, because it's taking more of your user's time. And so when you look at that, though, I think the biggest things that we've seen is it's not just the ad content, it's how you introduce the advertising and where you introduce the advertising, what's the emotional state of the user. And those are a lot of what we're looking at. I mean, on some level, it's very hard to convince advertisers to basically change their actual advertising. They have certain ways they want to communicate, but as a game developer, you can change the way you introduce advertising into your experience and do so in a way that actually leverages the emotional state of the user. I think the biggest thing, though, I mean, some of the simplest things are just really frequently, like, we looked at like the call to action buttons. That's one really, really strong one. There's almost all the games that I review, there's not even a call to action button. There's nothing signaling to the user what they should do, let alone having strong color contrast with those call to action buttons. It's not an accident that Google and Yahoo and Microsoft Bing they all use the same color for their search box for their call to action button. It's like that orange color. Yep. You guys notice that? Like, there's probably billions of dollars at stake every quarter if they just based on using the right sort of color contrast on their search call to action, so I think it's just there are these sort of basic principles. If you implement them, you can get significant gains, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So,
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see any cultural dependencies with respect to the characters, the call to action button shapes, or things like that?
Yeah. Well, we did it. We tried doing text, and then we tried doing shapes, like, for example, like shapes on call to action, we actually find. I think because of one way to sort of isolate some of the language or cultural issues that can be presented is just try not to use a lot of text. And shapes are going to tend to be more universal. I mean, even within colors, there's obviously different colors based on, different colors have different cultural meanings in different parts of the world. So there's some sensitivities there. But definitely, I think the big thing we found, like, if you're kind of doing global optimization, just stay away from text and just try to use shapes and numbers as much as possible.
We have one more question here, actually.
Oh,
right here.
You mentioned briefly placements. Do you have any learnings on what are good and bad placements, or some optimization on terms of, where?
Yeah. Placements are actually what drives monetization probably more than anything, and that's why we specifically with NativeX, as I mentioned, we designed our technology for games. So we define 15 different placements that are commonly found in games, and then we use our predictive analytics technology to actually select which ad format will be tailored specifically to that placement. And that way we can capture that emotional state of the user and get the right advertising. But I'll give you an example though, like even once we've created the right format, it's a formatted interstitial with a great border and great call to action, buttons and all this. With one developer, I was reviewing the results last week. This game, I don't want to use their name because I don't have their permission, but this developer has about 1 million daily active users. It's in the top 100 grossing, and they were running an interstitial. They decided to run it in between. There's a sort of interaction in their game that sort of had involved with basically asking users for information and then showing them the response to that information. They decided it would be a good idea to place an ad right in between the asking the question and the giving them the answer. It had one of the lowest click-through rates. The ad itself per click was one of the highest performing. It was very high performing. It was a well-built ad. But it was not, the user's emotional state was, I want to get the answer to my question. So the click-through rates were about as low as I've ever seen for that ad format. I think all they would have done if they would have just moved at that interaction, they would have put the ad after the answer, where there was a natural break. They'll probably see, and they'll do this. I mean, it's pretty simple to change. But I think they'll probably end up seeing like 5 to 10x increase in performance just by that subtle change of the sequence of where you introduce an ad. And it's different. There's also obviously positive and negative emotional states within games. I mean, and that really should impact your ad placements, or whether it's in-app purchasing or advertising. It really makes no difference. I think you just got to be thoughtful about the emotional state of the user and also what interaction you're trying to drive.
I actually have a follow-up question to that. Do you have any systematic way of A/B testing locations, or do you have any suggestions? Like, do we need to run different locations week by week and then look at the data? What's your approach on that?
Our recommendation is during integration, you basically tag all the different placements, these sort of 15 divine placements. You can actually, with our self-service interface, you can shut them all off, and then you can turn them on and basically look at different combinations, all server-based. It's really easy. It's basically a one-page interface, and you can turn it on. You can also select if you have sensitivity and you want to control which ad format you want to run. So let's say you want interstitial, some kind of a rewarded video ad, etc. You can basically change that out all server side using our interface. So, but I think we're using basically predictive analytics to drive. If you just care about maximizing monetization, we can actually handle all that for you. You don't have to use the manual controls. We literally have predictive analytics systems that are predicting what's going to be the highest performing ad format, and it delivers it right at that moment for that user, for that placement. And that's using predictive analytics. We have a data science team that we've been investing in this technology for about a couple of years.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much, Rob.
Thanks.